A millionaire took his mistress to buy a crib. His pregnant wife bought the entire baby brand. They say a secret can unravel even the tightest of bonds. In this story, that secret is a simple crib purchase, an errand so ordinary yet laden with extraordinary betrayals. Daniel Harrington, a wealthy businessman with ties to celebrity circles, thought he could keep his double life in perfect balance. Little did he know, a single shopping trip with his mistress would spark the ultimate backlash. His pregnant wife, Sabrina, armed with determination and heartache, would respond in a way no one saw coming by buying the entire baby brand. Brace yourselves for a story of deceit, power plays, and karmic twists. Daniel Harrington was the kind of man who radiated confidence. Standing 6 feet tall with steely gray eyes and a neatly trimmed beard, he had always considered himself a self-made success story. Born in a modest home in Boston, Daniel built his empire from the ground up, beginning as an intern at a tech startup in his early 20s and eventually starting his own software consulting company. His meteoric rise to wealth had been punctuated by headlines in local business magazines. Tech savant. Daniel Harrington does it again. Fortune favors the bold. Daniel Harrington's startup explodes in value. In the well-heeled circles of New York City's Upper East Side, Daniel held a reputation that balanced professionalism with a hint of philanthropy. He had donated generously to local charities, including pediatric hospitals, to cultivate a polished public image. People knew him as a man who threw grand galas, invited Fortune 500 CEOs to his dinners, and once even attended an exclusive business conference hosted by Mark Cuban. Daniel was unstoppable. His personal life, on the surface, was just as impeccable. He had met Sabrina Lindstrom at a charity ball 5 years ago. Sabrina was the granddaughter of a Swedish real estate magnate, raised with both refinement and a keen sense of humility. She was a tall, elegant woman with warm brown eyes and an ever-present air of composure. Though her upbringing involved lavish estates in Stockholm and summer homes in Capri, Sabrina's heart was pure gold. She was known for her philanthropic work with children's hospitals, which had sparked Daniel's admiration from day one. They married at a chateau outside Paris, an event that made the society pages, complete with fireworks over the Seine and a guest list that included influential politicians and business icons. It was, by all accounts, a fairy tale union, and the press adored them. Sabrina, well-versed in public relations, handled Daniel's press engagements seamlessly, while Daniel continued to expand his ever-growing empire of tech solutions and digital ventures. In the earliest days of their marriage, Sabrina would watch her husband stand before a mirror in their penthouse suite overlooking Central Park and fix the collar of his suit. Daniel was ambitious, a trait she found both exhilarating and daunting. But Sabrina was no pushover. She was equally driven, albeit with a heart set on philanthropic endeavors rather than corporate boardrooms. For a while, it seemed like they complemented each other perfectly. The entrepreneur and the philanthropist, the power couple at the heart of New York's elite social scene. It was in their 3rd year of marriage that Sabrina became pregnant. The couple had struggled for nearly a year, consulting specialists and exploring fertility treatments. When Sabrina announced the positive test, Daniel beamed like a child on Christmas morning. The images from that day captured a side of him not often seen in board meetings: tender, emotional, and unmistakably invested in becoming a father. He brought Sabrina flowers every day for a week, and for a moment, it seemed as though they were on track to be the perfect family. However, life in the spotlight can be heavy with temptation. Daniel traveled extensively for business, often out of the country for weeks at a time, sealing deals in Dubai, Singapore, and London. Occasionally, Sabrina joined him. More often, she stayed home, busy with her charitable work and now caring for herself during pregnancy. The physical distance began to carve an emotional gulf between them. Late-night calls turned into perfunctory check-ins. Text messages went unread for hours or days. Sabrina, exhausted by her pregnancy, found herself drifting into a lonely routine, while Daniel found comfort in the buzz of new ventures and gatherings of wealthy associates. On the fringes of his glamorous world, certain names started to float into casual conversation, particularly that of a beautiful socialite named Clarissa Morgan. Clarissa had recently made headlines for her involvement in a minor film project in Hollywood, and her image was frequently splashed across tabloids. With her raven black hair, emerald green eyes, and a figure that demanded attention, Clarissa was a sensational presence. Rumors had it she was single again after a messy breakup with an art dealer in London. Somehow, her path crossed with Daniel's at a technology event in Silicon Valley, where she was a spokesperson for a startup focusing on AI-driven marketing. At first, Clarissa was just another face in Daniel's wide network. But as weeks turned to months, discreet sightings of them together began to emerge. A private plane flight to a conference in San Francisco, a late-night dinner at a Michelin-starred restaurant, just the two of them. The hush-hush chatter among the staff at Daniel's penthouse mentioned receiving phone calls from Ms. Morgan, though her name never appeared on any official appointment diaries or guest lists. For a man who had always prided himself on his self-control and devotion to Sabrina, it was a dangerous line to walk. Yet Daniel seemed unable or unwilling to resist Clarissa's allure. She was adventurous, spontaneous, and offered a thrill that tested the boundaries of his carefully cultivated image. If Sabrina represented stability and unwavering love, Clarissa symbolized excitement and the kind of spark Daniel feared he might be losing in his comfortable marriage. Like many men of power, Daniel believed he could keep both his wife and his mistress satisfied, carefully compartmentalizing each part of his life. But secrets, like wildfires, have a way of spreading, and once ignited, they can be nearly impossible to contain. The spark that would eventually set everything ablaze was, ironically, something as mundane as a baby crib. Yet it was not the crib itself, but rather the circumstances surrounding its purchase that would bring Daniel's entire double life into peril and unleash a chain of events nobody could have predicted. Clarissa Morgan was the epitome of high society charm. She had a cutting wit, a knack for seduction, and the ability to read powerful men like an open book. She knew Daniel was married. Everyone in their circle did. But for Clarissa, the thrill of capturing a man who seemed otherwise unattainable was the ultimate sport. She played the game skillfully, never pushing Daniel too hard, always appearing a little out of reach, and offering him glimpses into her world of glitz and spontaneity that made him feel alive. Daniel's attraction to Clarissa was both physical and psychological. Where Sabrina was gentle and supportive, Clarissa was electric and demanding. She challenged him, fueled his ego, and, though he would never say it aloud, made him feel more masculine than he had in a long time. His need for her became less about love and more about the rush, a drug to feed the emptiness he occasionally felt despite his success. Their affair began with clandestine dinners, hushed phone calls, and well-timed business trips. Initially, Daniel rationalized it. He was working hard, supporting his pregnant wife, and if a bit of excitement on the side helped him cope with the constant pressure, what was the harm? He showered Clarissa with expensive gifts, jewelry from Tiffany's, a limited edition watch, and even a customized handbag with her initials. In return, Clarissa provided him an escape from the responsibilities that weighed heavily on his shoulders. Sabrina, meanwhile, was navigating the rocky waters of pregnancy alone. She was 4 months along, and while the morning sickness had finally begun to fade, the emotional turbulence was stronger than ever. Daniel's prolonged absences and distracted phone calls worried her. She reached out to her best friend, Marissa Forner, confiding that she felt something was off. Marissa, who was quick to jump to conclusions, insisted that Daniel might be straying, an accusation Sabrina vehemently denied at first. But over time, the nagging doubts took root in Sabrina's mind. One evening, after calling Daniel repeatedly with no answer, Sabrina scrolled through social media. She came across a tagged photo of him posted by a fellow entrepreneur at a rooftop lounge in San Francisco. Daniel looked happy, carefree, and suspiciously close to Clarissa Morgan. Although the angle was blurry and Clarissa's face was partially hidden, Sabrina recognized her from tabloids. Her heart sank, but she forced herself to remain calm. Perhaps it was an innocent encounter. Daniel often met colleagues and potential investors for late-night drinks. But the more Sabrina tried to rationalize, the more the doubt grew. She decided not to confront Daniel immediately, hoping to find concrete evidence or a clear sign that she was simply overreacting. For weeks, she kept her suspicions locked away, focusing on her prenatal health and philanthropic projects. She spent time visiting children in hospitals and organizing a charity art auction. During these visits, Sabrina couldn't help but imagine what it would be like to have her own child. The excitement of motherhood offered a temporary balm to her worries about Daniel. Meanwhile, Daniel was drifting further into Clarissa's orbit. Their affair was now an open secret among the staff of Daniel's penthouse and his business associates. Though no one dared to tell Sabrina directly, Clarissa herself had grown comfortable in her role. She had bragged to a close friend, the aspiring actress Jade Billings, that she had never felt more powerful than she did on Daniel's arm. She enjoyed the hushed deference of Daniel's employees, the way she could snap her fingers and have a private jet ready for a weekend getaway. It was an arrangement that suited her well. All the while, the tension in Daniel's life was escalating. His software consulting company had landed a massive contract with a government entity, which demanded more oversight and a squeaky clean image. He needed Sabrina by his side for public relations. She was the perfect partner for presenting a united front at press conferences and charity events. Yet he also craved Clarissa, whose allure promised a break from the endless negotiations and corporate scrutiny. It became a precarious balancing act. Each time Sabrina asked about his whereabouts, Daniel concocted another half-truth. Each time Clarissa batted her eyelashes, he reminded himself that one slip-up could destroy everything. And yet, like a moth to a flame, he could not pull away. The turning point came during a conversation with an old friend, Henry Caldwell, who had known Daniel from their early days in Boston. Over dinner at an upscale Manhattan restaurant, Henry noticed Daniel's anxious demeanor. "You look like you're carrying the weight of the world," Henry said. "Any trouble at home?" Daniel forced a laugh. "You worry too much, Henry. I'm just under pressure with these new deals." Henry, a savvy observer, gave Daniel a skeptical glance. "You know I've got your back, but be careful. The higher you climb, the harder the fall if you slip." Henry's words reverberated in Daniel's mind. Still, Daniel assumed he could handle it. Men of power often share one common flaw. They think they are indestructible, immune to the normal moral consequences that bind everyone else. He had no idea that Sabrina was quietly gathering her own puzzle pieces, and that Clarissa's ambitions were slowly growing beyond just weekend getaways. Everything was inching toward a climax, and it was only a matter of time before the carefully spun web of lies collapsed under its own weight. A month later, Sabrina found herself in an ultrasound exam room, staring at the black and white image of a tiny life flickering on the screen. She was just over 20 weeks pregnant, and the baby's heartbeat sounded strong. Though she smiled at the technician, her heart felt heavy. Daniel had promised to be there. Instead, he texted her moments before the appointment, saying he had a critical meeting with a government representative about the new contract. Sabrina tried to focus on the miracle taking shape inside her. She listened to the steady thump-thump of her baby's heart and imagined the life that awaited them. Yet the absence of her husband cut into her joy like a cold blade. She politely thanked the doctor, collected the ultrasound pictures, and left the clinic with a mixture of love for her baby and growing resentment toward Daniel. Driving home, she recalled how Daniel once insisted on attending every appointment, every birthing class. But now, as success enveloped him, and possibly something else, his promises evaporated. Sabrina's frustration escalated into a quiet resolve. She needed to uncover the truth. The doubt and anxiety that had been gnawing at her demanded resolution. At home, Sabrina's first step was discreet. She checked phone records. While she couldn't intercept Daniel's private calls, she noticed a repeated number from Redwood City, California, that frequently appeared at odd hours. Suspecting it was Clarissa, Sabrina decided she wouldn't confront him directly about it yet. Instead, she spoke to a private investigator, a middle-aged woman named Alexis Cruz, recommended by a friend who had used her services in a similar situation. Alexis's approach was systematic and professional. She began following Daniel during his business trips, tailing him from hotels to restaurants. It didn't take long for Alexis to confirm Sabrina's suspicions. Daniel and Clarissa were photographed entering a penthouse suite at the Four Seasons in San Francisco. They were seen dining together, laughing intimately, and even making purchases at luxurious boutiques. The final straw was a series of photos showing Daniel and Clarissa stepping into a high-end baby store downtown. Clarissa's hand lingered on Daniel's arm, and the store clerk later reported they were looking at cribs and nursery decor. When Alexis presented the photos to Sabrina, her hands shook, and she felt a wave of nausea that wasn't just from the pregnancy. For a moment, She debated confronting Daniel with the evidence. The heartbreak was searing. Her husband, the father of her unborn child, was brazenly shopping for nursery items with another woman. The betrayal cut deeper than she had imagined. But Sabrina was not just any woman scorned. She was a strategist in her own right. She recognized the scenario. Clarissa was trying to weave herself into Daniel's life on a level that overshadowed even Sabrina's pregnancy. Clarissa wanted to be significant enough to Daniel that he'd willingly walk into a baby store with her, a store that, by all rights, Sabrina should have been visiting with him. Sabrina's sorrow soon twisted into anger, and then into something like cold determination. "I'm going to make sure he knows exactly who he married," Sabrina told Alexis. "And when I'm finished, they'll both regret this." That very day, Sabrina set two major plans into motion. First, she devised a way to corner Daniel into revealing his own deceit, using the one thing he valued above all else: his reputation in high society and in the business world. Secondly, she contacted an investment broker friend, Melissa Chan, who specialized in acquiring businesses. Sabrina had an unconventional idea, something that, if executed correctly, would send a message not just to Daniel, but to everyone watching. As Sabrina kept her composure, Daniel remained oblivious at home. He noticed she was quieter, more distant, but assumed it was merely pregnancy hormones. He even felt a twinge of guilt. The baby was due in a few months, and he knew he should be more present. But Clarissa's demands were growing, and she had entangled herself in his emotional fabric. She was planning a lavish birthday bash in St. Bart's and insisted he join her, promising they'd keep it strictly off the radar. Torn between the guilt of leaving a pregnant Sabrina and the pull of Clarissa's invitation, Daniel vacillated. In the end, his fascination with Clarissa won out. He told Sabrina he had an urgent meeting with new investors in the Caribbean. The lie tasted bitter in his mouth, but he convinced himself it was necessary. "This business is too big to pass up," he said. Sabrina listened to his words without contradiction. She simply nodded and pretended to believe him. She had grown far beyond anger. Now she was in full strategic mode. Each of Daniel's lies became another brick in the foundation of her plan. Before he left, Sabrina set a small gift on his suitcase, a silver rattle for the baby. She forced a sweet smile. "Don't forget why we're here, Daniel. Come back to me safe," she said, her voice controlled and steady. Daniel kissed her on the forehead, muttered something about missing her, and hurried out the door. Sabrina watched him go with a mix of sadness and anticipation, certain that the stage was now set. She had no intention of letting Daniel's betrayal remain hidden for long, and she was about to prove that heartbreak, when wielded by someone with intelligence and resources, could transform into a powerful catalyst for revenge. The baby store that Daniel and Clarissa visited in San Francisco was part of a small but prestigious chain known as Cradle and Crown. It catered to affluent parents, offering handcrafted cribs, silk bedding, designer strollers, and custom nursery artwork. The flagship location featured private shopping suites, crystal chandeliers, and personal shoppers who fawned over high-profile clients. Sabrina first heard of Cradle and Crown when Alexis showed her the investigator's photographs. In one shot, Clarissa was perched on the edge of a display crib, her lips curved in a triumphant smile, while Daniel stood behind her, looking at brochures for premium nursery packages. Something about that image sparked Sabrina's fury. It wasn't enough that Daniel was cheating. He was also stepping into Sabrina's territory as an expectant mother, tarnishing something sacred. Sabrina's unborn child deserved better than a father who would shop for cribs with a mistress. As weeks passed, Sabrina's pregnancy advanced into its 6th month, and she started making her moves in silence. Through Melissa Chan, she arranged discreet meetings with the Cradle and Crown brand's owners, an older couple named Howard and Bianca Stevenson. They were initially hesitant about selling, as Cradle and Crown was their life's work. However, Sabrina had a way of presenting her offer that was too tempting to refuse. She came prepared with detailed market analyses, expansion plans, and a promise to preserve the brand's artisanal essence. On top of that, she brought in personal stories of philanthropic initiatives that benefited families and children's health. Within weeks, the Stevensons agreed to the sale. The acquisition papers were signed in a private room at a luxury hotel in Manhattan. Sabrina insisted on absolute secrecy. No press releases, no public statements. The brand's name would remain unchanged, and from the outside, Cradle and Crown would look as if it had the same owners. But quietly, Sabrina became the majority shareholder and effective CEO. Daniel remained in the dark, busy with his government contracts and juggling Clarissa's demands. He paid little attention to Sabrina's newfound hobby. If he noticed her frequent phone calls and meetings, he assumed they were related to her charity work or the occasional real estate investments Sabrina had dabbled in, thanks to her Swedish family connections. He had no reason to suspect his wife had purchased an entire baby products brand, least of all the very one in which he and Clarissa had been picking out a crib. The day Daniel and Clarissa decided to finalize their crib purchase, Sabrina orchestrated a scenario that would unravel everything. Clarissa, feeling increasingly smug about her hold on Daniel, proposed they buy the most extravagant crib from Cradle and Crown. She wanted a statement piece, something that symbolized her place in Daniel's future. Although Daniel felt a twinge of guilt, he accompanied Clarissa to the store. What neither of them expected was the VIP treatment they received upon arrival. A store manager, fully aware of the recent change in ownership, offered them the private shopping suite. Lavish hors d'oeuvres, sparkling water, and soft music set the stage for what Clarissa assumed would be a romantic moment. She draped herself across the plush seating area, beckoning Daniel to her side. The manager offered them champagne, which Clarissa accepted, giggling about how it felt so decadent to shop for a crib this way. As they examined the custom crib designs, the manager discreetly left the room. Moments later, Sabrina walked in. She was elegant in a fitted maternity dress, her baby bump now undeniable. For a moment, Clarissa froze, her eyes darting from Sabrina to Daniel, the glass of champagne trembling in her hand. Daniel's face drained of color, his heart plunging into his stomach. Sabrina met his gaze, her expression devoid of the anger one might expect. Instead, she radiated a poised, almost regal calm. "I see you're making plans," Sabrina said, the slightest tremor betraying her controlled anger. "Funny, I thought we'd do this together, Daniel." Clarissa attempted to regain her composure, crossing her legs and offering a small laugh. "We were just looking," she stammered. Her bravado faltered under Sabrina's direct stare. Daniel attempted to speak, but words failed him. He had never seen Sabrina so composed, yet so chillingly determined. He tried to reach for her hand. She stepped back, shaking her head lightly. "Don't," she whispered. "You've said enough without words." Before Clarissa could conjure another excuse, Sabrina dropped the bombshell. "Whatever crib you two decide on will ultimately be your choice. After all, Cradle and Crown belongs to me now. Every piece of furniture, every design, every store location, it's all under my ownership." The shock in Daniel's eyes was palpable. His lips parted, but nothing came out. Clarissa stared, disbelief flickering across her face. Sabrina continued in a measured tone, explaining how she had quietly acquired the brand, the negotiations, and the discreet signing. Her calm veneer cracked just slightly when she spoke of Daniel's betrayal. "You thought you could shop for a crib with another woman while I carried our child? Fine, but understand that you have no power here anymore." She looked at Clarissa, who seemed frozen to her seat, and added, "By all means, pick out whatever you like, but don't forget that every last dime of this purchase goes to my pocket and, eventually, to my child's future." The moment was as excruciating as it was cathartic. Clarissa finally found her voice, laced with indignation. "You can't just," Sabrina cut her off. "I can't, and I have. But you're free to go. No one is forcing you to stay." Unable to withstand the tension, Clarissa stood, muttering a swift apology, and fled the suite in a flurry of embarrassment. Daniel, torn between shame and disbelief, tried to apologize, stammering about how he never intended for this to happen. Sabrina looked at him with an intensity that pinned him to the spot. "I'm not interested in what you intended," she said, her voice quivering with emotion. "I'm interested in what you've done and what this means for our child." The store fell silent, except for the soft hum of the overhead lighting. When Sabrina finally turned to leave, Daniel could only stand there, powerless and paralyzed. He had never imagined a scenario where his transgressions would lead to such a dramatic power shift. The crippling realization of his mistake hung in the air, and for the first time in his life, Daniel Harrington felt the full weight of his own hubris. In the aftermath of that explosive confrontation, Daniel was left to grapple with the unraveling of his private life. Word traveled fast among the employees at Cradle and Crown, filtering out to the closed-lipped circles of Manhattan's elite. Within 48 hours, whispered rumors circulated at high-end cocktail parties. Did you hear? Daniel Harrington's wife bought the entire baby brand and caught him there with his mistress. Daniel tried to manage the fallout with the same PR tactics he used in business crises. He arranged a meeting with his publicist and legal team, hoping to keep the scandal contained. But damage control became almost impossible once tabloids got wind of the situation, fueled by an anonymous tip, presumably from someone in Clarissa's circle. Daniel had once been the golden boy of the tech world, but now every headline was a variation of Millionaire's extravagant affair exposed by pregnant wife's swift business move. Sabrina, meanwhile, refused to hide. She had spent years being a gracious partner, the philanthropic half of a power couple. Now she was the betrayed wife turned formidable entrepreneur. She received calls from news outlets wanting her statement, but she declined interviews, choosing instead to issue a short, dignified announcement. Cradle and Crown has been acquired with the intention of continuing its legacy of excellence. Any speculation regarding my personal life is just that, speculation. My priority is, and always will be, the well-being of my family. The business world reacted with a mix of awe and caution. Some commended Sabrina for her savvy move and unwavering composure. Others whispered behind closed doors that this spelled doom for Daniel's once impeccable brand. Even government officials overseeing his new contract expressed concern about how personal scandals might reflect on Daniel's professional reliability. For Clarissa, the sudden exposure was humiliating. She retreated from the public eye, canceling her upcoming birthday bash in St. Bart's and avoiding paparazzi, who were desperate for a quote. She wrote Daniel a series of frantic text messages, oscillating between fury at being humiliated and pleas for him to protect her from the tabloid onslaught. Despite her glamorous aspirations, Clarissa despised being known merely as the other woman. She had aimed to ascend through social circles with Daniel by her side, but now her reputation was tarnished. Amid the chaos, Daniel had no choice but to confront Sabrina face to face. He found her in the nursery of their penthouse, studying color swatches for the walls. The place looked surprisingly spare. No crib, no baby decorations, nothing but paint samples and a few furniture catalogs. She was alone, a hand on her growing belly, lost in thought. When she glanced up, her expression was stoic, guarded by layers of hurt. "Can we talk?" Daniel asked quietly. Sabrina nodded but kept her distance. Her posture was rigid, as though bracing herself for impact. Daniel's voice trembled as he began. "I'm sorry. There's no excuse. I got caught up in something I didn't know how to stop. I was stupid and selfish." He paused, searching her eyes for any flicker of forgiveness. "I know an apology isn't enough, but I am sorry." For a moment, Sabrina seemed on the verge of tears. Her voice, however, remained measured. "You humiliated me in public, in private. Worst of all, you risked our family's future for a cheap thrill." He tried to approach, but she stepped back. "I understand if you hate me," he said, his own eyes moist. "I deserve it." Sabrina inhaled a shaky breath. "I don't hate you, but I don't know if I can trust you. Every time I close my eyes, I see you in that store with her. Do you know how that feels?" A tear finally slid down Daniel's cheek. He had spent his life avoiding vulnerability, yet here he was, laid bare by his own actions. "I know I've ruined everything. Just tell me how I can make this right." Sabrina said nothing at first. She turned away, resting her hand on the near-empty crib catalog. When she finally spoke, her voice was clear, her words decisive. "You can't make it right overnight. I'm not even sure if we can repair this at all. But I'm carrying our child, and he or she deserves a father who shows up. So, for now, we navigate this carefully. You focus on the baby, and so will I. We'll see what happens." Daniel nodded, a flicker of hope in his eyes. He knew this was the best he could hope for at the moment. A chance to stay in Sabrina's orbit, to prove himself, however slim that chance might be. In the days that followed, the tension in the penthouse was tangible. Daniel moved his belongings into the guest suite, an unspoken agreement that he would keep his distance until Sabrina decided otherwise. He spent his free time researching child development, attending prenatal classes alone, and consulting with marriage counselors. Meanwhile, Sabrina remained outwardly composed, but at night she wrestled with heartbreak and anger. She found fleeting comfort in feeling the baby's kicks, reminding her that, amidst all the turmoil, a new life was on its way. And so, the couple lived under one roof, barely speaking beyond what was necessary to coordinate doctor's appointments. Their once glamorous world was now a minefield of paparazzi, business dilemmas, and unresolved emotional wounds. Yet, even in the darkest moments, Sabrina felt a strange sense of empowerment. She had taken control of her narrative, reclaiming a shred of dignity by outmaneuvering the mistress. If Daniel wanted to make amends, he would have to traverse a path of accountability and humility like never before. News of Daniel's affair and the subsequent baby brand buyout didn't vanish overnight. In fact, it gained traction, fueled by talk shows and tabloids eager to spin sensational theories. Was Sabrina's move a callous exercise of power? Would Daniel attempt to save face by stepping down from his company? Would Clarissa resurface in a tell-all interview? The scandal had real business ramifications. Stocks for Daniel's company, Harrington Tech Solutions, wavered, reflecting a dip in investor confidence. Government officials scrutinized him more closely, hinting that any negative press might jeopardize the integrity of their contract. High-level partners, once eager to jump on board his ventures, became suddenly cautious. Despite the building pressure, Daniel refused to retreat entirely. He believed he could rectify the situation if he worked hard enough. Mornings found him in a whirlwind of crisis meetings with PR teams and attorneys. Afternoons were devoted to fulfilling obligations on the government contract, a Herculean task under the watchful eyes of potential critics. By evening, he returned to the penthouse, greeted by silence. Sabrina kept to her private quarters, interacting with him only for baby-related matters or if mutual appearances were unavoidable. During one such evening, Daniel found Sabrina standing in the penthouse library, flipping through a family photo album. Pictures of their wedding in Paris, her in a billowing white gown, him looking dapper in a tailored suit, contrasted sharply with the reality they now faced. Daniel approached cautiously. "We looked happy then," he ventured, breaking the silence. She closed the album and set it aside. "We were," she replied flatly. "But a lot has changed." A heavy pause lingered. Daniel wanted to say he missed her, missed them, but the words felt hollow. Eventually, Sabrina excused herself, leaving the album behind like a testament to what they had lost. Daniel sank into a chair, staring at the photos in disbelief. How had he let everything slip away? He yearned to find a reset button to undo all the damage. Yet he knew such magic did not exist. Meanwhile, Clarissa's life was in a tailspin of its own. She had lost her comfortable arrangement with Daniel and was inundated with media requests. Paparazzi tailed her every move, hoping to snap a photo or elicit a scandalous soundbite. The hush money Daniel's lawyers offered was substantial, but Clarissa had to measure it against the allure of selling her story to a celebrity magazine. In a twist of irony, Clarissa discovered that the moment she became the other woman, many of her high society friends distanced themselves to avoid guilt by association. Invitations dried up. Sponsors pulled out of her small film projects. She found herself more alone than ever, left with the realization that her glamorous world was built on precarious social ties. Simultaneously, Sabrina thrived in her new role at Cradle and Crown. As a majority shareholder, she initiated expansions that aligned with her philanthropic goals, implementing special lines for charities and pushing for partnerships with children's hospitals. She also used her connections to create exclusive high-end collaborations with European designers. The brand's revenues grew steadily, and Sabrina funneled portions of the profits toward pediatric care initiatives and maternity health programs. Late one afternoon, Sabrina found herself in a meeting with Howard and Bianca Stevenson, former owners of Cradle and Crown, to discuss updates. Howard, a kindly grandfather figure, turned to Sabrina with gentle curiosity. "My dear, it seems you've invested a lot of heart into this venture," he said. "Is there a personal reason driving you, beyond what everyone's saying in the tabloids?" Sabrina paused, her eyes flickering with a mix of hurt and determination. "My child," she said softly, "I want to build something that secures a bright future for him or her." Her voice caught for a moment. "I refuse to let that future be tainted by betrayal. Cradle and Crown is, in a way, my declaration that I'm stronger than that." Howard and Bianca exchanged empathetic glances. Bianca reached out and patted Sabrina's hand. We believe in you, Sabrina. Whatever your reasons, the brand is in good hands. At home, Sabrina's growing success only magnified the chasm between her and Daniel. He struggled to reconcile the wife he once knew, soft-spoken, philanthropic, content to remain in the background, with this formidable new force who commanded boardrooms and overshadowed his power moves. On more than one occasion, Daniel's business peers commented on Sabrina's brilliance, some even joking that she was the real Harrington star nowadays. As painful as it was for Daniel, a part of him swelled with pride at her achievements. If only he could share in that pride without the lingering ghost of his betrayal. In fleeting moments, Sabrina allowed a glimpse of her emotional turmoil to surface. She would cradle her baby bump at night, tears wetting her pillow as she felt the baby move. Sometimes she questioned if she was doing the right thing by keeping Daniel at arm's length, especially now that they would soon become parents. Other times, she resolved that her boundaries were necessary for her own dignity. Daniel had to earn his place again, if that was even possible. And so, the household existed in a fragile equilibrium, neither fully together nor entirely broken. With each passing day, the weight of consequences bore down on them all. Sabrina used her entrepreneurial success to cope, while Daniel confronted the wreckage of his once untouchable reputation. Their future remained uncertain, tethered by the life growing within Sabrina. A silent question lingered in every interaction. Could love and trust ever be restored after such a public betrayal? Or would their story become a cautionary tale for anyone who believed power could shield them from moral reckoning? A tipping point arrived 3 weeks before Sabrina's due date. Daniel's business was already wobbling, but a leaked government audit report sent everything into a downward spiral. Although the audit found no direct evidence of fraud, it raised questions about Daniel's leadership amid personal scandals. Investors panicked, and Harrington Tech Solutions' stock value plummeted nearly 20% overnight. Daniel spent hours in emergency board meetings, phone pressed to his ear as he negotiated with panicked shareholders. By the time he returned to the penthouse late that evening, he was greeted by an unexpected sight. Sabrina was seated on the couch, hands folded over her baby bump, eyes blazing with determination. "I'm calling a family council," she said. Her voice held a quiet authority that left no room for debate. Family council was a concept they had picked up from one of Sabrina's Swedish relatives, a tradition where the family gathered to address crises in a structured manner. Daniel was too exhausted to argue. He slumped onto the armchair across from her, bracing himself for whatever was coming. Sabrina began. "You've brought us to the brink. Your reputation is in tatters, and now your company is suffering, too. This impacts our child's future, and I won't stand by and let it ruin everything." Daniel's voice was hollow. "I know. I'm trying to fix it. The board wants me to step down temporarily to show good faith." She studied him for a moment, perhaps gauging how sincere he was. "Do you think that's the right move?" He exhaled shakily. "Yes. If I step down, maybe the company can stabilize. Maybe the contract won't be in jeopardy. But part of me feels like I'm failing, like I built this empire, and now I'm letting it slip away." Sabrina pressed her lips together. "You let something else slip away long before this. Our marriage, your integrity. Now you're dealing with the consequences." Daniel winced. Her words stung, but they were true. He closed his eyes briefly, summoning the courage to speak. "Sabrina, I know you have every reason to hate me, but I still love you. I'm sorry that my actions have caused you so much pain. I want to do right by you and our child. I'll do anything." She looked at him, sadness mingling with anger. "Love isn't a magic word that fixes everything, Daniel. We have to decide what kind of parents we want to be. Our child deserves honesty, stability, and respect. Right now, we're falling short on all counts." He couldn't meet her gaze. "So what do we do?" Sabrina inhaled, drawing strength from the life inside her. "You step down from the company. Do what's necessary to salvage your reputation. You get therapy, counseling, whatever it takes to prove to me that you can be trusted again. In the meantime, I'm focusing on cradle and crown and preparing for this baby. If we're going to co-parent, we need to be on the same page." Her ultimatum hovered in the air. Daniel nodded, tears threatening to escape. He whispered, "Thank you. Thank you for at least giving me a path forward." That night, Daniel formally announced his temporary resignation to the board, citing personal reasons. The news sent shockwaves through the corporate world. Some critics crowed that Daniel's downfall was inevitable, while others admired his willingness to step back to address his personal issues. Clarissa, who had been in sporadic contact, saw this as an opportunity to gain his ear. She left him a voicemail. "I know you're going through a lot. Please let me be there for you. You matter to me." But Daniel did not reply. In the midst of chaos, he realized with stark clarity that Clarissa offered no solace, only a reminder of his worst mistakes. For the first time in months, Daniel tried to find genuine redemption. He started attending individual therapy sessions to confront the deeper reasons behind his affair: his fear of losing excitement, the sense of entitlement that came with success, the craving for an ego boost. He also booked appointments with a couples therapist, though Sabrina was hesitant to attend. She was not sure if she wanted to salvage the marriage or simply manage an amicable co-parenting relationship. Still, for the baby's sake, she agreed to try at least a few sessions. As Sabrina's due date approached, she experienced increased fatigue and anxiety. Publicly, she remained the poised entrepreneur, unveiling a new charity partnership with Cradle and Crown that provided free bassinets to financially struggling single mothers. Privately, she wrestled with questions of whether she should allow Daniel into the delivery room. She hated him for what he did, but she also understood that he was the baby's father. In the last therapy session before her due date, Sabrina, concurrent to this, Daniel was working to rebuild his integrity through consistent therapy and accountability measures, aware that his presence in the delivery room was not guaranteed. In the last therapy session before her due date, Sabrina voiced her deepest fears. What if I can't ever trust him again? What if the baby grows up sensing that tension, that resentment? The therapist offered gentle insights, explaining that healing was a process requiring time, remorse, and genuine change from Daniel. Ultimately, only Sabrina could decide if she was willing to see who Daniel became in his pursuit of redemption. That night, Daniel approached Sabrina in the hallway outside her bedroom. His eyes brimmed with remorse. "I know I've lost the right to expect your forgiveness," he said, "but I want to be there for the birth. Please let me be a father from day one." Sabrina's expression softened slightly. "I'll think about it," she replied gently, rubbing her belly as if seeking counsel from the life inside her. There was no immediate yes or no, only a fragile promise to consider his request. And so, on the cusp of new life, they hovered between heartbreak and hope. The tension in the penthouse remained taut, but now it held a faint glimmer of possibility. Beneath the aftermath of Daniel's crash lay the first signs of an awakening, a realization that, if they were to move forward, they would have to confront their worst selves and perhaps discover their better ones in the process. The day arrived in a swirl of nerves and anticipation. Sabrina woke up before dawn with mild contractions. Initially, she tried to manage them alone, pacing around her bedroom. But by morning, the pains intensified. She called out for Daniel, who rushed to her side. For the first time in months, their eyes met with a shared urgency that eclipsed their personal tensions. The baby was coming. They arrived at the hospital in a flurry of medical protocols and forms. Sabrina was whisked into a private suite, courtesy of the hospital wing she and Daniel had donated to in earlier, happier times. Nurses checked her vitals, monitored the baby, and administered pain relief. Throughout it all, Daniel was there, holding her hand, fetching ice chips, whispering reassurances. Despite her lingering resentment, Sabrina found herself oddly comforted by his presence. He was still the father of her child, after all. Hours passed. Contractions ebbed and flowed, and medical staff prepared for delivery. In a brief lull, Sabrina looked at Daniel, sweat dotting her brow. "I'm allowing you here because of the baby," she said through clenched teeth, struggling against a fresh wave of pain. "Don't take it as a sign that I've forgiven you." He nodded solemnly, wiping her forehead with a damp cloth. "I understand. Thank you for giving me this chance." When it was finally time to push, Sabrina dug deep into her reserves of strength. Her emotions soared between exhilaration and fear. Through the haze of pain and elation, she felt Daniel's supportive grip on her arm. She heard the frantic encouragement of nurses and doctors and felt the swirl of adrenaline as the baby crowned. Then, a single sharp cry pierced the air. A wave of relief washed over Sabrina as the doctor lifted a tiny, wriggling form into view. A baby girl, pink and perfect. Her cries announced her arrival with unabashed vigor. Sabrina burst into tears, overwhelmed by the miracle of new life. Beside her, Daniel stared at his daughter in awe, tears streaming freely down his face. "You have a baby girl," the doctor announced, placing the infant on Sabrina's chest for skin-to-skin contact. Sabrina felt her heart swell with a love so powerful it momentarily blotted out every betrayal. She held her daughter close, marveling at the tiny fingers, the soft tufts of hair, the way the baby's squinted eyes struggled to adjust to the bright world. Daniel leaned in, his voice trembling as he said, "She's perfect. She's absolutely perfect." Gently, he brushed his daughter's cheek with his fingertip, a profound reverence in his gaze. For a fleeting moment, he and Sabrina were united in pure, unadulterated joy. In the hours following the birth, mother and child were monitored closely. Sabrina's exhaustion finally gave way to a wave of sleep. Daniel cradled the baby in his arms, promising her a better man than he had been. He whispered apologies she wouldn't understand, vows he hoped he could keep. Time stood still in that quiet moment, father and daughter illuminated by the hospital room's soft overhead light. When Sabrina woke later, she found Daniel seated in a chair, the baby swaddled securely against his chest. She watched them for a moment, her emotions churning. He looked like a man reborn, tears dried on his cheeks, eyes wide with wonder. But the memory of his betrayal still lingered like a scar. She couldn't simply pretend it never happened. Daniel sensed her gaze and looked up. "Do you want to hold her?" he asked softly. Sabrina nodded, and Daniel carefully transferred the baby into her arms. Their daughter yawned, tiny lips pursing in a content expression. Sabrina's heart clenched with a fierce, protective love, not just for the baby, but for the future she wanted to protect. "Daniel," she began quietly, "this changes things. Not us, necessarily, but my priorities. Our daughter comes first, above everything. I don't know if I can ever trust you the way I did before, but I won't deny her a father. If you want to be in her life, prove it. Show up for her. Be the man she deserves." He bowed his head, tears threatening to spill again. "I will. Whatever it takes." Over the next few days, Sabrina remained in the hospital for observation, experiencing the normal bouts of postpartum vulnerability. Nurses taught her techniques for feeding and swaddling, and Daniel took copious notes, determined to be a hands-on father. There were awkward silences between them, remnants of distrust and unspoken hurt. Yet there was also a glimmer of something new, a tentative hope that, maybe, through their daughter, they could forge a different path. When Sabrina was discharged, they returned to the penthouse, now carefully reconfigured with a nursery filled with cradle and crown pieces Sabrina had personally selected. No vestige of Clarissa's involvement in sight. The baby's name, Charlotte, was embroidered on a plush blanket. As Sabrina laid Charlotte in her crib for the first time, Daniel hovered protectively, ensuring she was comfortable. Sabrina glanced at him, recalling the day she discovered his deception in that very brand's crib store. "I bought Cradle and Crown because I refused to let you and Clarissa tarnish what should be ours," she said, almost to herself. "This is our daughter's world now, and if you want to be part of it, you'll follow my lead." He replied quietly, "I understand, and I'm sorry for everything." She gave a small nod, acknowledging his words without offering absolution. Forgiveness was a process, not a one-time event. For now, their truce was a fragile one, carefully balanced on the promise of a better tomorrow for Charlotte. And so began the next chapter of their lives, one marked by 3 a.m. feedings, diaper changes, baby coos, and the slow rebuilding of trust in the shadow of betrayal. Whether Daniel and Sabrina would one day return to the love they once knew remained uncertain. But with Charlotte as their anchor, they faced the future, determined to give her all the love and security she deserved, forging a new kind of family in the aftermath of a very public scandal. In the end, Daniel and Sabrina's story reminds us that betrayals can happen in even the most glamorous circles, but so can strength and resilience. Sabrina bought an entire baby brand not just to make a statement, but to secure her child's future. Daniel faced a crushing fall from grace, yet found a glimmer of hope in fatherhood. Their journey isn't a fairy tale ending, but a testament to the power of facing our darkest truths and choosing to move forward one step at a time. Thank you for joining us for this dramatic tale of betrayal, power plays, and unexpected redemption. If you enjoyed this story, please give it a like, share it with friends who love a good twist, and subscribe to our channel for more riveting real-life drama and fictionalized sagas. Your support keeps our community growing. So, stay tuned for more stories that capture the essence of life's biggest highs and lowest lows.